Make sure to check out my Covey account, link down in the description. And check out my other series, Modern Classics and TV Treasures.
Hello, I'm the geek. Henry R. Mockingbird has went on vacation, but he's left the recording in his absence for you to enjoy.
Hello, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache. And wow, after the last review I did, I think I may have taken some serious mental damage. Thank God Mind Boggle Week is almost over. Well, to end off Mind Boggle Week, I'm going to end off on a high note. Today's review is Raggedy Ann and Andy's Musical Adventure. Raggedy Ann and her brother Andy leave the playroom to rescue a French doll named Babette, who was captured by a pirate. While on their way through the woods to rescue her, both Raggedy Ann and Andy come across an array of strange and quirky characters on their adventure to rescue her, and must trudge through thick and thin to get her home. So, what do I think of this movie? Well, I like it. The film was loosely based on the children's book called Raggedy Ann and Andy and the Camel with the Wrinkled Knees, as well as the Mac Flatcher short film, which had Goofy himself, Pinto Colvin, playing the camel with the wrinkled knees.
Don't worry, I'm only the camel with the wrinkled knees. And I'll take you to the castle with the greatest of ease.
The film itself was directed by Richard Williams, which, if you remember my Christmas Carol 71 review, then you would know he was the animation director on Who Framed Roger Rabbit and directed the pretty troubled production The Thief and the Cobbler. And speaking of productions, let's talk about this film's production. After the success of The Little Angel, producer Richard Horner, which literally sounds like the name of a corn dog stand, decided to make a film based on the popular dolls Raggedy Ann and Andy, which started life as a live-action TV special, which was going to be on the Hallmark Channel, which was going to have Liza Minnelli as Raggedy Ann and Dick Van Dyke as Andy for star recognition. And screenwriter Mac Wilkes started adding fantastical elements like the greedy, and the film would change from a mere TV special to a movie, and would later change from live action to animation, in which Hallmark pretty much lost interest and dropped the project entirely. Which is hilarious given how this was the same company that let Dinotopia Quest for the Ruby Sunstone come into existence. They decided to get Richard Williams to direct the project, but he wasn't interested. Started suggesting some of his friends like Abe Lepetow, who directed Gay Paris.
Bubbles, bubbles, and bottles and bubbles. Bubbles and parasols that swing you on carousels of bubbles.
The Hell Factor. Richie Boy also suggested John Hubley, who was also a production designer on films like All That Jazz, Murder on the Orient Express, and Mary Poppins, and The Wiz. He also suggested Tony Walton, who started his career as an assistant animator on Snow White and Pinocchio, and was going to be the animation director for Fantasia until he wasn't. And then he would later go on to work for UPA on stuff like Gerald McBoing Boing and Mr. Magoo, and also did work for Watership Down. Richard Williams ended up getting Abe Lepetow to direct the picture until he passed away, leaving Richard Boy in the bag, so he ended up directing it. When the film finally came out, the critical reception for this film was very mixed, praising the songs and the animation and voice cast, with Roger Ebert saying that he enjoyed the film fully, but with the slightest need to revert my childhood. Damn, and I thought critics nowadays were very lenient towards gatekeeping their childhood.
To give one of the greatest superheroes of all time a Bat credit card? No! No! Does not compute!
But despite all of that, the film did manage to gain a cult following. The film begins with a school bus and a little girl named Marcella coming off said school bus and going into her bedroom, where we see all the toys, including those things. But we'll get to them later. No, your eyes do not deceive you. This is a live-action segment. It happens in the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, and a little bit in the middle. And by the way, the little girl Marcella is played by Claire Williams, who is Richard Williams' real-life daughter. Anyways, we go from animation to live action the moment Marcella leaves the room. Let's talk about the animation. It looks really good, and that's a given how it was made by Richard Williams. I especially love how Raggedy Ann just flops around like a rag doll would flop around. Well, anyways, we get our first song, and yes, it's a musical, as the title suggests. But there are way too many of them in this movie, so I'm only gonna go with a few. And by the by, the songs were written by Raposo, who also did songs for Sesame Street, The Electric Company, The Muppet TV Special, The Frog Prince, and The Great Muppet Caper. And I forgot to mention that Raggedy Ann is voiced by Didi Khan, who also played Frenchie in Grease. Now let us listen to the first song.
I look, and what do I see? Looking out with two brand new shoe button eyes, here's what appears to me. I see lots of pretty, and a lot of happy, and a bit of everything that's there inside of me. I look.
And they see Andy crushed under it. So Raggedy Ann and her friends attempt to get the box off him. His whole shtick, at least at the beginning, is he doesn't want to be seen as another girl's toy. In fact, there's a whole song about it. Listen.
Well, you can push me, shove me, turn me around, but I'm no girl's toy. You can tie me, toss me upside or down, but I'm no girl's toy.
Marcella finally opens her birthday present, which turns out to be a French doll, which she calls Babette. And Babette is a bratty French doll who actually thinks she's from France, and gives the other toys a bit of a pain in the rear end. Or at least at first. Later, she admits to how bratty she was and actually apologizes towards Raggedy Ann. Anyways, Yosemite Sam's pirate cousin ends up falling in love with her and kidnaps her. Wait a minute.
You know what? This sounds somewhat familiar. I can't really put my finger on it, but let me see if I got this straight.
Toy who's a rag doll who just so happens to be the child's favorite toy, a new toy that the child gets for his birthday, and toys that come to life when the owner isn't at play, and it deals with a toy being left behind by its owner.
I wonder why that sounds so familiar. Oh yeah! It was the plot of Toy Story.
Now, to be fair, neither Raggedy Ann and Andy or Toy Story were the first ones to do this simple premise of a toy coming to life. There were the Mac Fletcher Raggedy Ann and Andy shorts, and the Forgotten Toys, and Jim Henson's The Christmas Toy. Saying Raggedy Ann and Andy ripped off Toy Story is kind of like saying Splash ripped off The Little Mermaid just because they both have mermaids in them.
Just like in my Gay Paris review, I probably would accuse this movie of being a Toy Story knockoff. But the thing is, just like Gay Paris and the Aristocats, this movie came out several decades before Toy Story.
Into the woods to find Babette. Raggedy Ann feels rather scared going into the woods, but Andy comforts her with a paper flower that he had. And this is where the sort of romance between the two kind of blossoms, despite the fact that they're both brother and sister, which is kind of creepy in hindsight. So get our next song, candy hearts and paper flowers, which is a nice nod to the short given how there Raggedy Ann had a candy heart. So let's listen to the song.
Candy hearts and paper flowers, sunshine days and skies of blue.
Woods where we even see even the woods are detailed. I mean, look at some of these backgrounds. Until they run into the camel with the wrinkled knees. I'm just gonna say it. He is probably the most sympathetic character. He has the saddest freaking backstory, and where he once belonged to a kid named Sam, but his mom was very mean and threw the camel out, and he's been on his own looking for a home ever since. And spoiler alert, he ends up finding a home with Raggedy Ann and Andy. And when Raggedy Ann said, "No more mirages, Mr. Camel," I actually got a little teary-eyed. And when Marcella discovers him and finally picks him up, I was actually bawling like a baby. Also gets a good song called Blue. Let's listen to it.
When you can't find a friend and the road doesn't seem to end and you're lonesome the whole day through, how can you be happy? How can you be smiling? How can you be anything but low down, saggy and blue?
And you know how I said the camel with the wrinkled knees sees mirages? Well, no joke. He actually sees mirages of camels. He thinks this caravan of camels are calling him home, and he constantly runs after them and says, I ain't gonna let happiness get away from me. I've been chasing it most of my life. And then they fall into the taffy pit. And believe me when I say, this is where the movie gets weird. Oh, well, weirder. A creature who lives in the taffy pit is called the Greedy, who I can best describe as the grub that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man would eat. He's always eating sweets of every description, and he is never satisfied. And without a sweetheart, he can never get enough.
You can give me candy, cotton candy, chocolate bar or lollipop. Fill me up on ice cream, dripping fudge sauce, butterscotch and nuts that never stop. Feed me globs and gushes of your most delicious stuff. But without a sweetheart, I never get enough.
Even before now, we had weird stuff like the camel caravan. And yes, it's time to talk about these two. These two dolls are always singing in unison. And they have constant close-ups where they're close to the camera and you see their eyes. And their eyes are like pure color-coded nightmare fuel. Not only that, but the Greedy tries to cut out Raggedy Ann's candy heart. they get away from him and they run into the loony knight. Saying he's loony would be an understatement. He's like what would happen if Marvin Agnew from Who Framed Roger Rabbit got his screws more loose than they already were. He's constantly playing pranks on the crew and causing trouble for them. They go into this circus version of the Cave of Wonders from Jafar. They step on a tongue, it rolls them on in, and then it rolls them down, and it laughs, and then it turns into a silent film. Boy, I wish I could show you half this crap, but I can't because YouTube won't let me. Well, anyways, they meet a king who's very, very short, has a lot of crazy, loony subjects, and grows whenever he laughs. Laugh Agra or something, I don't know. And they have the mother of all pie fights. King ends up calling this flubbery guy when he discovers they're gone. I don't even know how to describe him. He's like a Muppet crossed with Flubber. Seriously, why does no one ever talk about this thing when they review this movie? Well, a part of the climax has the king exploding from laughter. I highly recommend this movie. It's weird and charming in all the best ways. So I highly recommend it. 5 gold stars. That's pretty much all I have to say about Raggedy Ann and Andy's musical adventure. Well, that's pretty much the end of Mind Boggle Week. Sorry I couldn't turn this into Mind Boggle Month, but I'll try to bring back Mind Boggle Week as Mind Boggle Month someday. Okay, well, until the next review, I'm Henry R. Mockingbird, your host with the mustache, signing off.